Welcome to Modus Cafe. Join us for fun, lighthearted, and educational conversations around training, athletic longevity, and the human side of climbing. With your hosts, Mercedes Pollmeyer and Katja Dev.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Modus Cafe. Welcome back, Mercedes. So today we have a really fun episode for you guys. We're going to do a two-part episode. We'll be answering listeners' questions. We have some really fun and really good questions that we had submitted by listeners, and we're going to answer them today. We're very excited about it. It's always fun. It feels like live coaching a little bit when we get to do that. But before we get started on that, we want to talk about our climbing training membership because enrollment is open right now. And we thought we want to just share what this membership is about. And in order to get started, we thought we would share why we care about this membership, why we got started with this membership, and what it is that we actually want to deliver. Because there's a lot of climbing training options out there, but we really believe that our membership is different than most things we have seen out there. And the first piece that we want to share is that we really, really believe that climbing training, climbing training is for everybody. Often when we, scroll the internet or we see people climbing train, we have this idea of Olympic athletes in our mind or people who are really ripped and they send double ditches and they climb super hard. But we very much believe that people who love to climb and are passionate about getting better and, getting and staying healthy, they can train. Everybody can train. So we really created this membership to make climbing training accessible for everybody.
Yeah. And I don't know, for me, it's really beautiful to see people who really who are interested in training, and then they get started with training, and then they see this transformation in themselves. And it's not necessarily, yes, we see great changes, like how well they're climbing, but it's also just their relationship with climbing and the relationship with others in the climbing community. And I do think climbing training is a really great way to see what is capable, see what is capable for yourself. And a big part of being able to create a platform that is accessible for almost everybody is creating the best training plan. And when I say the best, it really, we've put so much experience into these programs. So I've been coaching for about 20 plus years. I was a tennis coach first, and then I went over to climbing, and Katja has so much experience with coaching people as well. And we put that into the program. It's also we've coached over 1,500. I think this number down here is so funny to me. 1,500 athletes. I think I've actually coached more than that because these are the people who have gone through our programs. But I've coached hundreds of people in person in groups, and it's just so beautiful to me. And so we put all of that experience into this program that everyone can be on and move through together. And it's not, we put these programs together that are really simple, they're effective, and prevent, I'm going to say in quotation marks, prevent injury, because it's not the typical program that you might buy off of the internet that's like a 4-week, bust your balls for 4 weeks and get kind of pumped. It's not that kind of program. This is a program that is designed for longevity in mind. That's also a really big part of our philosophy is, can you do this? Can you train and climb for as long as possible and stay as healthy as possible? And that kind of goes into our second big motto of Modus is that, strong, healthy humans make strong, healthy climbers. And we want to make sure that our training program encapsulates that. And so we, our programming, I would say, is very accessible for people because you can scale it. You can, if you're very new, we say that a lot of our folks are newer trainees. They're not new to climbing necessarily, but they're new to training. And training can sometimes be very difficult to figure out on your own. And so the people that we get are like, you know what? I've scaled the internet and I don't really know where to start. And so they come to us and we help them with this program. It's very simple and you can adjust it if you're new. You can choose exercises that are going to be a little bit more basic, a little bit more like a little safer for you to execute. And then we have folks in our membership who climb like V9, V10, who also scale their program up a little bit. But honestly, we see the same people working on the same program with almost very little adjustments and still making progress. And that's really cool. And this has actually taken a while. Like the membership has been around for I think 3 years now. And we did kind of change the programming to have this one program that everyone is following. And I really do believe this is such an effective way to train and to train a group together. Yeah, I really do love the program. I nerd out on these programming whenever I design the programs, like every 6 weeks, I get to really nerd out and think about these different climbers in mind when I'm creating these programs. Yeah, so training is for everybody, and we make sure that our program reflects that as well.
Yeah, totally. And I maybe briefly want to share very concisely my story of how I started training, which is really, I had this realization that it was a childhood dream of mine to become an athlete. I always wanted to be an athlete. And I had this idea of what it meant to be an athlete, right? Mm-hmm. And I realized at the age of 39, right, being an athlete does not mean to go to the Olympics, as I said at the beginning. Being an athlete is really just an intention in life. And I realized that the only way for me to become an athlete is to treat myself as one. So at the age of 39, I was like, so what if I just treated myself as an athlete? So I made some diet changes. I reduced, how much alcohol I drank. And I really just decided to take my climbing more seriously and treat myself as an athlete. So one of the things I did was, hire a coach, which was Mercedes. And that change in philosophy not only made me a lot stronger and made me a much better climber, but it really made me a lot happier. I just love that I get to live my life as an athlete like I wanted to live my life always. And so I wanted to share that story because I was 39 when I did that. I was a mom, and certainly not like a typical, Olympic athlete that you would see out there. But, I can help myself and up at the gym, and I can climb, and most importantly, really, really enjoy climbing. And I have to say, I'm going to be 42 pretty soon, and I still see improvements in my climbing and in my strength. And that's really, really exciting. So I wanted to share that with people because really the membership is for anybody out there who wants to be an athlete at any age, and with as little time as people have. That's what I wanted to emphasize too. The way we design these training plans, when we say these training plans are for everybody, is that these are meant for busy adults or for people who have all the time in the world to train, because these training plans are modular. But especially for busy adults, I know parents out there tend to be just busy by nature. People have a career, and people who might be a little bit on the older side. When I say a little bit on the older side, I mean, 30 plus. Because there's so much we can still do when we are, I don't even like the word older, but when we are, 30 plus years old. And we have quite a few members who started climbing later in their, lifetime, in their 40s, and, our parents, and still love climbing and really use it as a way of staying healthy too, healthy and fit. It's like, sometimes we joke and we say, in our training plans, like, climbing training for us is like the new CrossFit. Not that our training plans mimic CrossFit at all. They really don't. But this idea of, using climbing training just a means to stay active and healthy. And I actually interviewed one of our members, Elisa. She's the one I just talked about. She is a mom. She started climbing in her 40s. She went from climbing 5'10" to 5'12" in her membership. And I actually interviewed her on the podcast. So we're going to put a link below if you want to hear that interview. It's very inspiring. Her whole story is very inspiring. How she started climbing and what she's doing with climbing now. And I will also interview another member of ours, and that interview will come out next week. So if you're curious about our members and what they've achieved and who they are, check out those interviews. But maybe now we can just very briefly talk about the basic framework of what our membership looks like. As Mercedes said, we have these modular training plans that can be adapted. So they are, everybody starts on the same training plan, which is really nice because then we can also learn together, train together. You can ask questions about your training, and you will find like-minded people who are on the same training plan as you. Those training plans change over the years. You don't have the exact same plan week in and week out. They do change. They're progressive over the years, and they the topics or the intentions of the training plan change too. And those training plans, they are ready to go. So when you sign up for a membership, you get a training plan. You could start the next day if you wanted to. You will receive those training plans through an app. So they're really easily accessible. You get instructional videos for each workout, and there's a way for you to track progress and also to message your coaches, which are Mercedes and I. So those are the basics for the training plans. If you want to learn more about them, the details of the training plans, you can click the link below. There is a page that we created for our training membership with a lot more information. But a training membership is also more than just the training plans, even though I will say a lot of our members actually, they join the membership, and they most of the time they will just access the training plan and they will train. But we do offer more than that. We also offer monthly challenges. Our newest challenge is actually, what was the last challenge we did? Like a deadlift challenge, Mercedes? What was the one that you ran?
The last one we did was dynamic movement.
Oh, a dynamic movement challenge, yeah. And so with that, it's just like, they're themed by month. So you can just very specifically work on one specific topic that we decide on, and you can again do it with the community, or you can do it without the community. This is what's beautiful, because if you join a membership, you do not have to be an active member in the community, but you certainly can be an active member in the community, which also helps with accountability and encouragement. You can ask questions, and a lot of members who participate in the community, they absolutely love the community. But I just want to highlight too, not everybody is as outgoing or interested in joining a community, and so you definitely get both, and our community is a bonus to our training plans. And of course, you have access to coaches. We do monthly Q&As in our membership, and we also have a nutrition coach, and she does bi-monthly nutrition calls to talk about different nutrition topics. So that's our membership in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, shout out to Amanda Fitt. She is our nutrition coach, and she does a really great job and has helped a lot of our athletes in the community. And with the nutrition calls, you have access to a nutrition course that we put together. This nutrition course is really based on kind of like habit change and stacking habits so that you can eat well for a lifetime. This isn't like a quick fix diet or anything like that. We really do believe in long-term changes and simple changes that you can easily implement into your life. And one thing that our membership isn't is a Reddit community. I don't know if anyone goes into Reddit and puts in posts their here's this V3 I just did, and then you just get shit on. The Reddit community is so crazy to me. There's a lot of really, really awesome people in Reddit, and then most of the people are just not very supportive. And really, a lot of those comments are kind of what I really wanted to differentiate our community as. We're not Reddit. We are a very supportive, loving community that, if you have questions about training, if you want to post your climbing video, we're going to give you feedback, and it's constructive. It's not, you're going to climb more, or maybe you should just commit more. We're going to approach things very differently and in a very supportive way. I really our community is so wonderful. They're such wonderful people, and they're ready to help, the enthusiastic climber. So yeah, I love our membership. And, I would say that it's so funny when you think about training for climbing, and even just climbing, it's such a weird thing. We're putting all of this energy into climbing plastic or climbing rocks. And, if I think for a while I did struggle with what am I doing? Why is it that I am a climbing coach and I'm trying to help these people do this thing? And really, it comes down to how do you live your life? And there's different containers that you can choose to live your life in. And for me, for Katja, for all of our members, we've chosen climbing, and that's our container. And this is how we're going to learn about ourselves. And this is like a huge, like, I would say this is a core belief of Modus, is that we can really learn a lot and connect with ourselves, and learn to be a better human while we're also getting physically stronger, learning about our psychology when we're interacting with other people and when we're going outside, and trying some things that create a lot of fear. We can learn so much about ourselves. And then the second part is that, part of our membership is actually connecting with other people. And when you can learn some skills around that, there is a way to interact with people and grow your community. It's not saying that you should have a community of like thousands of people, but you can have a community of like very close, special people in your life that also love climbing. So those are all kind of like things that are wrapped into kind of like the mission statement of Modus and what our membership is really based on. And really the last piece is like nature. You don't have to climb outside if you don't want to, but do you go outside on a walk? Do you hike? If you can connect with nature, that's amazing. And in Modus, like one of the bonus things that we didn't actually mention is that we have meetups. We have meetups in the Western US where it can, like, we will meet outside, and past trips have been to Joshua Tree, to Squamish, to Leavenworth. We have a Red Rocks trip coming up this month. And this is how we, want to connect. This is how I would like our members to connect with each other, is in nature as well. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell right there. That's our membership. We'd love to have you come check it out. But yeah, we're gonna pivot now into some listener Q&A.
Yeah, I just want to say, for people who are interested in the membership, there is a link below. You can check out more information and you can sign up for it. You can sign up for it monthly or yearly. You get to choose. And if you sign up monthly, you can cancel anytime. You can come and check it out and see how you like it. Okay, let's go into the listener Q&As as promised. I'm very excited about it. Mercedes, do you want to read us the first question?
Yeah. Okay, first one. I just wanted to take this opportunity to tell you how much I appreciate you too. You too, as in the number 2. I watched and listened to a lot of your stuff. It inspired me to call myself a climber, take up space in the gym, eat better, and do strength exercises in sort of a structured way. And you are just lovely, lovely humans all the way from the Netherlands. Lots of love. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
So she actually has a question for you, Katya. How do you combine being a badass climber and being a mom? Is it easier because your job is climbing related?
Oh, first of all, thank you so much for that compliment. And also, yeah, it just makes me, and I'm sure Mercedes too, so happy to know that, some of the things that we talk about, it reaches you and it helps you do the things you want to do. And so thank you so much for sharing. Greetings to the Netherlands. And yes, how do you combine being a badass climber and being a mom? That is a great question. Is it because your job is climbing related? That is a great question. I was definitely a climber and a mom before I started this job. It's more that, what we just talked about in terms of our climbing philosophy. Mercedes and I just shared how for us, climbing training is more than just the thing that we do. It goes deeper. It's a big life philosophy for us. It's like how we move our bodies. At least for me, it's a big part is also mental health and how I connect with the world around me and how I connect with myself and others. And I say that because that led me to become a climbing coach versus the other way around. And how do you combine being a badass climber and being a mom? I think you just do it. you just do the thing. I think, anybody who's a mom can do and be anything else they want to desire to do. That's what I would say. I don't think being a mom should be restrictive. And maybe I'm also misunderstanding this question, but I think being a mom should inspire you to be the person you want to be, because that's the role model you're going to be for the next generation. And so, yes, I made some choices in my life that allow me to climb more and focus on my climbing more because I'm a mom, and that inspired me to live the life that I want to live with intention and purpose and joy. So that's my answer for that. I have, there's a practical answer to that I do feel like especially with organized training plans and some creativity. And I know lots of working moms too, working moms meaning moms who don't work as a climbing coach, how it's very doable to be a climber and be a mom. And I will say, after I had my son, I started by just doing 30-minute sessions a couple times a week. Consistency goes a long way, and knowing what to do when really helps being very efficient with training. You don't need to train for 3 to 4 hours, 3 to 4 days a week to become a good climber or to become the climber you want to be. I don't like the term good climber because it's all relative. And I will say, though, that's part of our membership. One of the things we talk about is also the mindset component of what does it mean to be a good climber? Who is the climber that you want to be? And why do you even want to improve your climbing? What does badass mean to you? I do consider myself badass, but I don't consider myself badass because of the grades that I climb. Because I know for some people, the grades I climb are great, but for others, they're the warm-up grades. I know very much where my level is at, but I consider myself badass because I do live the life that I want to live. And I put a lot of intention into it and a lot of thought and joy. So thank you so much for that. But I do very much believe that climbing and being a mom go together very well. Because I will tell you, kids just love to climb also. To me, it's like such a natural instinct too. So I feel like I get to be a kid again. And I love that I get to share that passion and joy with the world now. Amazing. Next question. Great. I don't know if this fits your expertise, but how do you make, in parentheses, long-term friends at a climbing gym? I started climbing with my boyfriend, and his friends are nice, but they're not my friends and they don't climb at my level. Also, I sometimes meet nice people, but then I don't see them again in the bouldering gym. Mercedes, do you want to give a stab at this first?
Yeah, I would say most of my friends are climbers. I mean, it's not easy, kind of just like what Katya was talking about. You have to kind of make a decision of this is what I'm going to do, and you might have to make an intention that you want to make friends. And like, I think a really good place for you to start would be to go to the special events. Like that's the first way you can do it. Like, I think meeting people who are maybe in the same category of climbing as you, that can really help. It can maybe take away some of the intimidation. But the gyms a lot of the time have like these fun special events, and that could be a good way to at least get to see people at the gym. And then if you see each other like in a special event and then see them outside of that, you can say hello. That's a really fun way to at least grow your network of climbers. I really do think a lot of gyms do a good job of hosting special events. Like sometimes that's like a female climb night or queer climb night, or new climbers climb night. There's so many. And yeah, you choose the one that you feel like you want to go. Yeah, and if it depends on how shy you are. Like, I'm definitely kind of like more on the shy side, but if I'm working on a boulder and there's someone who's also kind of working on the same boulder, I might just like chat with them, like, oh, how did you do this? Like, people love to talk about themselves. So if you just ask a question that gets them to talk about themselves, you have made a friend. This is literally like how to win friends and influence people. You ask questions that are going to have them talk about themselves. And honestly, that's the secret. So those are kind of like my strategies. I've met a lot of people through meetups. I've met obviously like through coaching. I've met so many students, and so many of my students have become my really good friends. One of my really great students and friends is now working with me, Katya. So I make it happen. and and then just talk to people, on boulder problems that you're also trying. There's you got to put yourself out there a little bit, but there's very low risk involved in like talking to people. I think we can get really nervous talking to people, especially in this day and age. Somehow, like, we feel like we have a lot to lose if we just like connect with someone, even just asking them a question, but you don't. There's nothing, you're not going to lose anything by asking some questions and even just saying, hey, that was good job on that climb. That was awesome.
Yeah, totally. I also want to really acknowledge the awareness that you bring to this question, which is you're realizing that your boyfriend's friends are not your friends. And I think I want to acknowledge that because I actually see this a lot where, women start climbing because of their boyfriends, but then they kind of get sucked into their boyfriend's community and they're not always happy there. So I really want to acknowledge you for recognizing that and for wanting to be intentional about changing that. Love it, hands down. So that's already, I would say, you've actually managed the biggest hurdle right there, and everything else from here in will actually be a lot easier. Mercedes gave some really great suggestions. I think one of the things, if you don't do it already, I recommend go to the bouldering gym by yourself. If you normally climb with your boyfriend and his skiing, then it might be also harder to meet other people. Mercedes laughing because I said gang. I meant group. Yeah. I meant group. I'm not saying it's a gang, sorry. Yeah. But yeah, go by yourself. It's easier to actually connect with others and strangers if you go by yourself, because others who might be going by themselves too might have an easier time also talking to you if you're not already part of a group. And I hands down just tell people, hey, I really enjoyed climbing with you today. Would you want to climb again with me next week? Or what times do you normally climb? I ask what times they normally climb. If that is, or I just even ask, hey, is this the gym that you normally go to? And what kind of things do you like to climb? And then I hands down just ask for a phone number. And afterwards, I just message them and I say, it's a great day today climbing, can we hang out again? Something like that. I also wanted to say, just putting yourself out there, it's a funny story and I like to share it because I actually had, at the time, a random person messaged me on Instagram to want to hang out with me and meet up. And I did. We're great friends now. So I'm just sharing the story. It's an Instagram, but local friendship. She lives in my town. And, but it just speaks to you putting yourself out there and how that's very helpful. The meetups are great. And the last thing I want to say, especially with making long-term friends, being patient. Even just making long-term friends, whether or not they climb or not, takes time and patience. And that will be true for climbing friendships also. And if you want to connect with people more immediately and you're a little bit on the shyer side, you could always check out a membership. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. It is a great way to meet people. And that's honestly what the people say in a membership. I will say we did start this membership thinking this would be this great community, but the way people actually get to know each other in the membership actually goes beyond what we thought was actually going to happen. So yeah, depending on where you live, they might not live in the same city, but it's a great start to share your passion. And especially if you go to the gym by yourself, you still get to share that passion with others. Great question.
Making friends is like dating. It can be tricky, but it's same thing applies. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, next question. I don't think I can really answer this question. I can, but this is really for you, Katja. How can you eat enough protein when vegan? Katja is not vegan, but
yeah, I am vegetarian. Yes. And in parentheses, this person said, without the cottage cheese. So cottage cheese is one of my favorite things to talk about. That's why I think this question is hilarious. Which, I think you can get a lot of great protein with cottage cheese. It's amazing if you do eat milk products. If not, as a vegan, funny that I get this question today because I did just have a conversation with someone at the gym yesterday about being vegan and getting enough protein as a vegan. And it's absolutely possible. I just want to say that it's absolutely possible to get enough protein as a vegan. I do think it requires quite some effort and thought to be put into your diet. And I could probably do actually just a whole podcast episode about this, but I want to try to concisely answer this question. So the trickiest part about getting enough protein as a vegan is twofold. One, the sources that you might be eating in general tend to have less protein, let's say per calorie spent, than non-vegan sources of protein. So meat and milk products, essentially, so animal products, just tend to have more protein, let's say, per calorie spent. And I'll talk in a minute about why this matters. And the second sort of quote unquote problem with being vegan is that even the protein that is in some foods, the way the protein is available is not as ideal as animal sources. For example, when you have a slice of bread and you look up how much protein is in a slice of bread, it might say it's 5 grams. However, from those 5 grams, you might actually only absorb 50% of that. So the protein that's available to your body is only half of that. And I would say that's probably one of the bigger misconceptions that I see out there, is people not realizing that. So essentially, to make it easier for you to get enough protein is you would have to try to overshoot how much protein you're consuming. So meaning, for example, without knowing you, I would suggest, again, I don't know you, but let's say where to a smaller woman who eats animal products, I might tell her to shoot for 20 to 25 grams of protein per meal 4 times a day. That would be a great start. For you as a vegan, I would actually suggest to shoot higher than that, maybe 30 to 35 grams, because of the availability of protein or the lack thereof, because the sources that you're eating provide less available protein to your body. So that's the first thing. The first practical thing is try to shoot for more protein. And the next advice I can give you is really a numbers game. So it's very possible, but it's essentially look up how much protein is in the sources that you're eating compared to the fat and carbohydrates. Because a lot of the protein sources that are plant-based contain a lot more fats and carbohydrates than protein. That's not a problem in itself, because we also need fats and carbohydrates. But it's a numbers game, because most people who want to increase their protein consumption, they don't want to increase their calorie consumption. And as someone who's a nutrition coach, I'm very aware of this. I don't mind talking about calories. I don't think there's anything wrong with people wanting to be health conscious when it comes to not wanting to overeat. And that's probably the biggest problem I see with the vegan diet, when people do try to increase their protein consumption, that by default, it can really easily increase their calorie consumption. And then people don't feel very satisfied with their diet, because most people don't want to gain weight. If you do want to gain weight, that's a great way of doing it. But I'm going to speak just about how you can increase your protein consumption without necessarily increasing your calorie consumption as someone who's vegan. And that really comes down to making sure that you know what are the carbohydrate and fat sources that you're consuming, and making sure essentially that you're not adding excessive carbs and fats to your protein sources that might already be carbs and fats. I will give you 2 practical examples. One is actually beans, for example. And my favorite myth that I like to bust is, personally, I don't like to suggest to people to consider hummus a protein source, certainly not athletes. That is not to say that there's no protein in hummus. There is protein in hummus, but there's very little protein in hummus compared to carbohydrates. Hummus is mostly carbohydrates. And I want to give you an example. For example, I live in the United States, and there's this one brand that a lot of people like to eat. If you eat a whole container of hummus, you will get 35 grams of protein. That is a good amount for a meal for you. However, just that container of hummus, just the hummus, no bread, nothing else with that, will also be over 1,000 calories. Now, for most people, that's too many calories to consume in order to get the right amount of protein. And that is what I'm talking about, where, for example, if hummus was your protein source, your major protein source, in this case, I would not suggest necessarily adding a ton of extra carbohydrates to that hummus, because now you're just eating a lot of calories for not a ton of protein. And another example would be nuts. They can be a great source of protein too, but with nuts also comes a lot of fat content. So this is how you need to try to balance your plate. You just need to consider, where are my protein sources? You start with the protein sources, you calculate how much protein it might be, or even just like, you don't have to calculate it. I'm a scientist, I like to calculate things, but You just start with putting your protein sources on your plate, and then you just see, well, do I already have a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of fats, or do I need to add any carbohydrates and fats? And often you might not need to. Same with lentils, for example. So lentils and beans and nuts are sort of typical protein sources for vegans. However, just keep in mind you're also getting a lot of fats and nuts with that, which is why it's important to balance. I also will give you some practical suggestions real quick of how you can try to increase your protein intake without increasing your carbohydrate and fat intake significantly. One, I will say, is protein shakes. Is probably the easiest one. There's some really good ones out there that you can use. Just try to make sure it's a balanced protein, meaning it contains all the essential amino acids. Most protein shakes nowadays, most protein powders do that. And actually, there's an advantage because it turns out that the more processed the protein is, the higher the absorbability, meaning you're actually getting more bang for your buck. Just make sure that for each serving of a protein powder, I really like for there to be at least 20 grams of protein in there. Because they are expensive, and sometimes you again get more carbohydrates and fats versus protein. But since your goal is to get more protein with that shake and you're spending that extra money, make sure there's a lot of protein in there actually per serving. And other great sources for vegans to consider, maybe to put on your plate besides beans and nuts, are tofu, a great source of protein. Also comes with fat, but it's definitely higher in protein depending on the tofu that you buy. Edamame is great, which is also soy. They're all soy based right now that I'm recommending. What's another one? No, it's slipping my mind. It's not tofu, but it's tempeh. Really great also. Yeah. Tempeh is a really great source of protein. And yeah, there's others out there. I'm just really careful to recommend others because with the others that come to my mind right now, I would have to speak to some caveats, and I don't want to just throw them out there because I don't like to contribute knowledge that is half digested, I guess. So I don't know if this was helpful. I hope this was helpful, but maybe I can do a longer episode on this. I do feel very passionate about it. I have made some coaching calls in our community about eating, getting enough protein as a vegan and vegetarian, but it's definitely doable. Definitely takes a bit more thought to be put into it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That was actually very in-depth. Thanks for whipping that up. Okay, next question. Is there a flow state on a single pitch climb? And in parentheses, they said, research says flow state is 30 minutes to hours. Can we get flow state in 10 minutes or less in a single pitch climb? That's really interesting. I don't know if I've actually ever read that flow state is between 30 minutes and above. I have experienced flow state on a boulder problem that has been 20 seconds. So yes, I absolutely do believe, but I'm curious, like maybe their definition of flow state could be a little different. Yes, you can absolutely enter flow state or something very close to a high focused moment or a lot of just like awareness as you're climbing. What's awesome, actually, I just had a call with a one-on-one client who we talked just about this because they have a hard time getting really focused, especially if there's people around. And I think like this could be one thing that's kind of like holding them back in their performance. So what we came up with, and I think this is what I do personally, and there are books about routines and rituals that you can do before you enter into the thing that you need flow state for. And so for bouldering, I have basically just a set of things that I make sure that I do so that I'm getting prepared for the climb that I'm about to send. So this is like a long-term project. I'm like, okay, this is my send go. At least that's my intent. And not every time that you do the ritual, you're going to enter flow state, but sometimes you do. And the more that you practice your routine and your ritual, the more times you're going to be able to enter into this focused state. So really it's coming up with that ritual or routine. So it's what happens before the climb. It's also what happens after the climb. And a lot of this is individualized. But what things that I can talk to that are that anyone can implement is basically, what are you doing? Are you saying something before you're approaching this climb? If so, it might be a good time to kind of like start either writing it down or just noting, like, okay, here's some things that are going through my head. Is this optimal? Sometimes you might notice, oh, I feel nervous. Oh, I have some anxiety about this. Oh, there's a little bit of fear. And you can start addressing some of those things as you're getting prepared for the climb. If you're not feeling confident, something I say to my athletes is this might be a good time for you to do a meditation. And this isn't, there's a lot of different forms of meditation, but really it's meditation can help you just see what's going on around you and see what's going on inside of you. And if you can just take that moment, even if it's 5 minutes, and just separate yourself from those thoughts, and ground yourself in the moment, that can just change the energy that you're about to bring to the climb. So if you're not feeling super confident, meditation could be something that you could try. If you are feeling pretty good, then you can start your sequencing, your visualization. Visualization, I think, is for everybody. There's a third person visualization and a first person visualization. You should do both. And that visualization could actually be, I'm wondering if this is actually like the glue to getting into that flow state, because you're already rehearsing what's going to happen and you're seeing the success happening. And you're seeing kind of like your perfect situation unfolding in front of you. So, like practice visualization. And then, like, are you chalking up? Are you brushing holds? Are you talking to your partner? Especially if you're a rope climber in the single pitch scenario, like talking to them about, what you want to happen and how you want them to belay. That's also going to help you get into that flow state, because you don't want to be worried about what they're doing and how they're belaying. You want to just put your full trust into them. So those are some tricks. My favorite book for kind of like some mental training is The Mental Training for Peak Performance by Stephen Underleiter. That's a book about interviews of hundreds, maybe thousands of athletes on how they get into a state of performance. And you'll see that meditation, visualization, and breathing are kind of like the top three. And it's a very easy read. So you can take a look at that.
Cool. Thank you so much, Mercedes. Also, great question. Next question. How to increase how long I can boulder outside in a day, in parentheses, skin-wise, fueling, rest, pyramids, etc. And then also volume versus projecting. We did just talk about this in our membership also. We do these monthly Q&A calls in our membership. We just talked about it. Yeah. Do you want to?
So the first thing, skin is going to be a limiting factor. Skin is a little harder to train. But what you can try is having longer sessions at the gym. So that means taking longer rests and spending at least a couple hours at the gym trying really hard. So this is for the projecting side. And then as you increase the session, you can then try back-to-back days. Like, that's really the easiest way to condition your skin and to condition your body for longer days and back-to-back days. Where people go wrong is doing too much in those sessions. Like, again, if you're going to be climbing all day, you shouldn't expect to be climbing hundreds of climbs at a very high level, so really make sure that you have your intention set. Like, if today is a projecting day, you're going to try really, really hard, but you're only going to give it, maybe 10 attempts at that high level. So that means you're going to be resting a lot. And you did mention like fueling, like how can fueling help on those days? But like snacking, make sure that you're consistently snacking between attempts, or, like every 30 minutes, if you can have something small to keep your energy up. This is a good time to have carbohydrates. But, like having a good mix is also a good idea. Like maybe every couple hours, having a good mix of macros is important. But yeah, so like slowly building out a longer day and then adding back to back days. That will give you a lot of information. If you're doing this at the gym, it can give you a lot of information on uh, what is working and what isn't. So if you're feeling really wrecked in that second day, like, what did you do that first day, and how can you adjust it so that you can leave some room, some recovery, so that you can climb the next day. And so this goes both for projecting and volume climbing. Like if you got to just be smart. Like, where are you right now? Are you able to climb 25 boulders in a session that are like easy? Awesome. Increase that by like a couple climbs the next week, and then increase that by a couple climbs the next week. And you can start to insert one or two harder climbs in that session over the weeks. Like, this isn't something you can just do in a couple weeks. This is kind of like a long-term preparation. Long-term be maybe 2 months. Like that's pretty good. You probably know that you're going to go outside on a trip a couple months ahead, and you can start preparing for it that way. Yeah. Katja, did you have anything else to add?
No, this is really good already. And I think it's a little bit tricky not knowing the specifics of the question too. And there's always going to be a little bit of a trade-off, like doing volume versus projecting. And part of that just depends on your goal too. What do you want to do? But I always like to talk about the energy bank. Let's say you have a jar full of marbles. That's your energy bank. So if you're projecting, you're taking out, 5 marbles for each attempt, versus if you're climbing easier boulders, you're taking out just 1 marble for each attempt, meaning that obviously if you do easier boulders, you can climb a lot more normally. I personally usually I try to have 1 volume day and 1 projecting day in a week, depending on how much you can go outside. I also like to start with volume when at the beginning of the season to condition my skin on easier climbs and just to get familiar with climbing outside. But again, I'm making some assumptions here, so it's unfortunately, I wish I could talk to you. I wish I could talk to you and ask you more questions about this. But yeah, it's a great question. And definitely also make sure that you have fuel and drink enough. Very important. This might actually be something we can do a whole podcast on, and we can talk about different scenarios too. Yeah, that would be good. Totally. So stay tuned, Lara. Or Lara. I don't know where you're from. If you're from Europe, you might be Lara. Okay, last question. Hi there. I'm a newbie climber that's currently at the V1 to V2 level, and I'm trying to break into V3s. Do you have any advice on how to improve overall foundations? I'm working on your Pulling Strong program right now, and I can do 2 pull-ups in a row consistently. First of all, congratulations. That is amazing. I could not do any pull-ups when I started climbing. Pull-ups are one of these things that are not easy for me. I can do them now, but it's still not an easy exercise. So I'm always impressed when people can do pull-ups. So that is great. Of course, one way, to improve your overall foundation is to join our membership. We have a lot of skills and drills in our training plans, which is probably what I would suggest to you, is just bringing intention to your climbing. So instead of just focusing on strength, which is always great, it's just focusing on bringing more intention to your climbing by doing different drills on the wall. What about you, Mercedes?
Yeah, I think I have seen this question 100 times in Reddit. Again, Reddit is just a horrible place sometimes. And a lot of the feedback that a person like this will get is just to climb more. And while that is actually good advice, like you should climb more, but what does that even mean? And the way that I like to put intention that's easy. Like if you don't really know the techniques, like you can probably go on YouTube and like search climbing technique and 1,000 videos will pop up. But let's say you don't really know which one to work on. That's okay. You don't have to focus on specifically like one thing. like every time. But one easy drill to do is slow motion climbing, because slow motion climbing helps you understand control in your movement. This isn't how we should be climbing all the time, but it does get you really strong. So slow motion climbing, I think, is like a secret drill that everyone should do. By all levels of climbers do this drill when they work with me. Um, so that's one thing you could think about. And then one day could be volume, where so it sounds like your upper end is V2. So maybe you go in and you do one day of climbing all of the V0s in the gym on every single terrain. You know, we have this drill. It's like the circuit. It's called the circuit. So all you do is you climb the whole gym at that grade. And then if your goal is V3, you should have a day where you go in and try a couple V3s in your gym. And that's how you're going to get better at climbing V3s. All right. And what's great is that actually our membership has like these drills. Like we set it all out for people. And we can give you those intentions. And this is how we program. We have one day of volume and one day of strength and one day of other intentions. And so, you know, we can definitely help you with that. And it's cool that you are focusing on pulling strength. I think 2 pull-ups honestly is really good. And as you climb more, your pulling strength is going to get stronger, without really having to focus too much on it. So at this point, you could maybe put in your pull-ups, you know, like try to maintain those 2 pull-ups, just put it in occasionally, but I don't think it's something you have to focus on right now. I think climbing and then some antagonist strength, like deadlifts and pushing, some sort of pushing motion is good enough, and just focus on getting in and climbing with intention. Okay, we are about done.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everybody, for all those questions. It was really fun to answer them. It's a really good mix of questions, too. So I think we should do something like that again soon.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks, Katja.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for listening. Bye.